Hello, and welcome to Big Sound Small Town. I'm your host, Sandy Carlton. The small towns and communities of Cleveland County, North Carolina have long been a hotbed of music in all its many forms. Several Cleveland County musicians have found commercial success and critical acclaim in the music industry. Yeah, everybody knows that Earl Scruggs, Don Gibson, Patty Loveless, and Alicia Bridges are from Cleveland County. Donald Byrd, too. So this is not a podcast about them. This is a podcast about the musicians who are still here to keep music alive here. This is the stories, and you need to know them and know the people who are making the music. This is not your normal podcast. My guest today on Big Sound Small Town is John Reid. I went to John's store, Shelby Music Center, on a hot day in August. His air conditioning was out and the fans were running. You can hear the fans in the background as we do this interview. But this interview is part of two with John. This one is about John Reid, the drummer. There'll be a follow-up story on John and the legacy and importance of his store, Shelby Music Center, to the music history of Cleveland County. But today, we're talking about John, the drummer. Before I start today, I need to give a shout out to my buddies, Dale Champion and Donnie Peeler, and their podcast, Crack House Chronicles. If you want a podcast about true crimes and mysteries, you need to check these guys out. Give them a listen. Today on Big Sound Small Town, we're coming to you from Shelby Music Center on Lafayette Street in Shelby, North Carolina. And my guest is third generation music store legend and owner and drummer John Reid.
Legend.
It's a legend. You know, this store has been a large part of.
Well, the store's been here since 1951.
Yeah, and that's a lot of musicians come through.
A lot of good ones have come, a lot of good ones are here, and a lot of good ones have already passed on. No, that's the bad thing about it.
This is true.
Yeah.
And you know, we're going to do one just on the store. But
okay.
Today, I'm interested in John Reid, the drummer.
Oh, Lord. Well, that was a lot of fun over the years. It's been, I guess I was about 5 or 6 years old, and there was a music teacher that taught upstairs. His name was Ray Ledford, and I went upstairs to take a guitar lesson. So he showed one kid how to play a chord, and he showed another kid how to play a chord, and he showed me how to play a chord, and I played the chord, and I turned the guitar over, and I was beating on the back of it. So then Ray showed us how to make another chord, and one kid made a chord, one other kid a chord, and I was beating on the back of the guitar, and he said, "John, go downstairs and tell your daddy he wants a set of drums, because Lord of mercy, you're not paying any attention here playing guitar." I said, "Oh, yes, sir." And I came downstairs. I said, "Dad, you know, Ray says I'm not going to make a guitar player, so I need to get a set of drums." And I think Dad should have killed Ray right about then.
I'm sure he.
So about 5 or 6 years, I was about 5 or 6, and he brought home a drum set. It was Christmas time. It was a drum set,
okay,
and you know, I had so much fun doing that. I think just keeping the neighbors up and driving my dad crazy. And just making, you know, it was just a lot of fun. But I played for a long time. I took a few lessons from a guy named Camp, Frank Klein,
okay,
at Cleveland Times, and I took a few lessons from him, and I went to Ray and I said, "I really ought to start playing guitar again." He said, "Son, you might be able to play with me one of these days when you grow up." So I said, "Okay, I'll do that." Well, sure enough, down the road I ended up playing with Ray, but I played drums for a long time, and had a good time doing it. And
did you play drums in school?
Yeah, I did. I went to the band director and I said, his name was Homer Hayworth, and I said, "Mr. Hayworth, I want to play drums in school. He looked over at his chart and he said, John, he had a lot of drummers already, and I looked over, he didn't have many trombone players. And he said, you have the perfect embouchure to play a trombone. So I thought, trombone. So I came home, I said to my dad on the music store, I said, Dad, Mr. Hayworth says that I ought to play a trombone. He said, really? He said, take these drumsticks and go in there and ask Mr. Hayworth if he can play double paradiddles. And then if he can play flam paradiddles. I said, Dad, anybody can do that. And he said, ask him if he can. So the next day I went to school and I said, Mr. Hayworth, I'll play a trombone, but my dad wants to know if you can play double paradiddles. He said, can you? I said, anybody can. He said, can you do flamadiddles? And he said, can you? I said, anybody can. He said, well, do it. And I did it on the little counter. He said, boy, but you got to teach the high school kids how to play this. And so I played drums all the way through. And in the band I played, and then I started playing in garage bands and kids that were a lot older than me, and then just different folks. And had 2 drummers that lived in the neighborhood. One was a Beam boy, Van Beam, and another was a Gary Green. And so I would go up to one of their houses and I'd say, golly, that's good. Can you show me how to do that? And he said, yeah, John. And he showed me a little bit of it. So I go down to the neighbor's house and say, Gary showed me this. He said, you can't do it. And I did it. He said, well, Gary can't do this. And so he would show me something. I took drum lessons like from both of them, stealing from them both as much as I could.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. I mean, it's just been a fun thing to play.
Well, that's kind of how you get it. I mean, that is learning from somebody that knows more than you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're smart enough to realize that they know more than you.
Yeah, and watch and see how they do it and try to emulate it the best you can.
What kind of music would that have been at that time?
Oh, old rock and roll. Old rock and roll, yeah.
Give me an example of old rock and roll.
Well, besides, I mean, I remember playing in a basement band, playing Love Potion Number 9.
Okay, I got you.
Love Potion Number 9. And then, you did Johnny B. Good stuff and all that. And, it was just what it was pop music at the time.
Right, yeah, okay.
So I learned how to play some of the fields listening to Hawaii Five-0. I thought, man, that sounds pretty good. And so I started to say, well, these are 16 fields. These are pretty cool. And I started figuring it out. But, I mean, you played along with the TV. You played along with headphones. You played along with records, Then I got introduced to Buddy Rich.
Yeah, that's a life changer there.
For a drummer, it is.
Well, yeah, it is.
And I was a kid. And so I would hear that Buddy Rich was going to be on Johnny Carson. So I'd sneak up at night. I was supposed to be in bed. And I'd sneak up at night and I'd cut it on. It was in black and white. And they had him playing. And that's how I'd learned. I said, man, that's fun music. That's for a drummer, that's the coolest stuff in the world. And started doing that type of stuff and trying to learn some of that jazz and all that. But that was one of my influences growing up. And
that's a good one. That's a very good one.
You don't get much better.
We set our standards high.
Yeah, but trust me when I say I can't even hold a stick. I wouldn't be worthy carrying the sticks in and handing them to them. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then I got into some bands that go out and play for teenagers and clubs and garage bands, and then then disco came around.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to burn my drums. Actually, I don't. This just get a drum machine. This is not really playing. But I'm finding that's kind of even now. I'm 58, and I'm talking about when I was a teenager, a young teenager at that. Things are turning around a little bit more now, so people are playing real music again and getting away from some of the toy stuff.
When did you decide that maybe I'd like to play it at a little higher level than what I'm doing?
Well, I did that I played through high school and all that, and I went to college, and I wasn't a music major. I was but I went to Western Carolina. They had a tremendous jazz program up there. So I went in and auditioned to be in the jazz band. There was like 20, I don't know if there's 20, but there's a good many drummers up there that were percussion majors, and Western has a tremendous school of music. And so I found the bass player that's been there for years, black guy. His name was Grip. I just went up and started talking to him. I said, I'm doing this as a drummer. He kind of rolled his back head and his eyes in the back of his head, and he said, oh, another white drummer.
Yeah.
So we did our thing, and I went in and just sat down, played comfortably with him, and ended up getting a spot there. And because of that, I could take my drum set to college.
Okay.
Because unless you were in the music, you couldn't take your instrument or have a practice room. So that was a lot of fun. So I played with the Western's Jazz Band for some time. And then I started going out on the side and playing with some of the college professors and doctors of music. We'd go down to Asheville, North Carolina, and play a steakhouse, and that was big payment, when you're a freshman in college.
What is this? Is this big band? Is this jazz?
This is just swing jazz, a lot of swing jazz stuff. It was smoking. And
big band?
Well, no, we would take fake books and go and ablet off of them. These guys had their doctorates in music, and so
it'd be like a trio, maybe.
A trio, but then again, we had a killer piano player from Bavard, a incredible percussion guy that played vibes and all this, and I was just playing drums behind him. A piano guy and a guitar player from Mars Hill that was a teacher. Right. Now, of course, I was the only kid that was playing, and so everybody got paid $100, and everybody had a great steak dinner. Right. And except,
that's good.
They look at me and go, "You don't get your $100. You get the steak dinner." I said, "Wait a minute, I played too." He said, "Man, you're a college student." I said, "I'm not in any of your classes. Right. I'm not a music major, so you can't dock me." Right. So they pay me, and so we did that.
That was a pretty good gig for the time.
Heck yeah, I was rich man on campus. Is what you call it. That was fun.
And having fun.
Oh, I had a ball.
Yeah.
Played with some incredible musicians.
Learned a lot about music.
Yeah.
So what happens from there?
Well, I left out a whole bunch of stuff, like going and playing with the Embers and all that down there.
You want to run that by me?
Well, we'll do that, but I was, like I said, I was in school. My dad was in pretty bad shape, and he needed to start slowing down and retiring. And he told me, he said, "Son, this music business, it might put a roof over your head, it might put food on your table, but you're never going to get rich because you're dealing with musicians. I mean, and let's face it, that's what it is."
He told you the truth.
That's right. He said, "You won't make a lot of money, but you'll make a lot of friends." And Lord of mercy, I have. I made a lot of friends over the years that are musicians. But after coming home from school, I was looking for something that I could play. And honestly, I didn't want to go play in a country band or a rock and roll band. I wanted to play in something a little bit more not saying more sophisticated, but just a little bit
more challenging.
Yeah, and so there was the old man the teacher that told me to go get a drum set.
Yeah.
Well, I went and asked him if I could play with him, and he told me I was too young. I said, "Well, Ray, I kind of grew up listening to your style of music." He said, "John, you're too young to play with us." And that was in December. January 2nd, he called me and said, "John, can you come sit in with us?" He said, our drummer had a heart attack New Year's night after the job was over. Can you come sit in with us? And I said, "Well, I might be able to." He said, "Do you own a tuxedo?" I said, "Tuxedo? Lord of mercy." I said, "No, I got a coat and tie." He said, "Well, wear a coat and tie." And so I walk in with a fellow named Ray Ledford, and there was Ambrose Owens and Johnny Beam, some of this real seasoned players for our area.
Right.
And
what were they playing?
Oh, they were playing. Well, they were playing a lot of stuff that we were playing before. A lot of standards, waltzes, charlestons, bossa novas.
So you were familiar not only with what Ray was doing, but you were familiar with that style of music.
Exactly. They were doing a lot of ballroom dances.
Yeah.
And funny thing is, he said, "John, this is a big band swing." I said, "Got it, no problem." Played it. He said, "John, this is a waltz." I said, "Okay, got it." He said, "This is a rumba. Now, if you don't know how to play it," I said, "Ray, I know how to do a rumba."
So you were playing the rumba.
I was playing rumba. He said, "If you don't know how to play it, just fill in." And so I said, "Ray, I can handle a rumba, no big deal." And he said, this is a good bossa nova. And I said, okay, fine. He said, don't know. I said, I know how to play it. Played it. He said, this is a Charleston. It's an up-tempo swing. I said, got it, Ray, no problem. He said, let's try a tango out. And I said, okay, we'll try a tango. And he started looking at the bass player that was much older. He said, this is a merengue. I said, what? Merengue. He said, if you don't know how to play it. And so our bass player turned around and looked at him and said, what the hell's a merengue? But needless to say, I got the job playing with him, and I played with him for years. Some of the best music that anybody that was fortunate enough to play with that man got to play over the years. And he knew it all. He knew everything about music, and so I had a time of my life. I was playing for people much older than me,
Right,
but that was
and with people much older than you.
oh yeah, exactly. And the knowledge that I got from those guys was just unbelievable. You know, there was Bill Allen that we've talked about. There was Ray Ledford. There was Johnny Beam. There was incredible. So that was in our area of Woods. That was some of the top-notch musicians that's been around, and he made a living doing it.
Right.
He sure did, and it helped me because it helped put food on my table and helped put my wife through college.
Right, I agree.
So we had a ball.
It kind of eased the effect of being here.
Yeah, it did.
I mean,
Yeah, it did. Every Friday, Saturday night for years, it was a different place every Friday and Saturday night. So we had a good time with
That's
that.
good.
But playing drums and I played in beach bands. I played in.
What happens next? I know there's a beach band history part here too.
Well, yeah. Ray's, and I hate to say it, like we're talking about, his crowd started dying off.
Right.
Slowly but surely dying off. So, I hated it, but I wanted to play, and there was a local beach band in town, and they asked me to come play with them, and I did. But honestly, I mean, beach music's fun to play. It's easy to play.
Yeah.
If you can put a shuffle to Mary Had a Little Lamb, they will dance to it.
Right.
But we played with those guys for a few years until I got very sick. I got very sick, but I was missing playing with the jazz things terribly. After some illness and getting through some transplants, some other different things, I got with a little 3-piece jazz combo, piano, bass, and drums, and we had a ball. Set up in 20 minutes, tear down in 10, go play wineries.
Do you remember who was in that group?
Absolutely, Kevin Holmesley.
Yes.
One of the finest keyboard players around. There's a fellow named Mike Hunt that played bass.
Okay.
There's 2 black guys
Right.
and me.
Yeah.
And so every now and then we would play, and they'd introduce us as the Oreo Jazz Band. Of course, I was in the middle. I was in the middle. But I had an awful good time with that. And with things going as they were, health is a whole nother story. Health not that good. So now I'm playing at my local church
That's good.
and having a ball doing it. I played with some lot better musicians than we have at our church, but I've never had this much fun.
Well, and there's a lot to be said for that too.
Yeah, I'm having lots of fun. That's what playing's all about.
So, what's your favorite drumming story?
Drumming story.
You got plenty of the other type.
Yeah, drumming story. Well, meeting drummers I got to meet Buddy Rich on a couple of
Did you finally get to meet him?
several occasions. Yeah,
good.
he was a jerk, but
Well, I was getting ready to ask you, were you disappointed?
not in his playing, in his attitude. In his attitude, yeah, he was.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, I was, I'm up here. I'll go to Appalachian. This is years ago. Went to Appalachian up here, and he was doing a drum clinic. And after the drum clinic, he was sitting there playing, and he said he would tell what he was doing. And a little fella said, "Mr. Rich, I didn't quite understand that, what you just did. Will you show me again?" He said, "Son, if you didn't understand that, why are you here?" And I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, I used to sit up at night as a kid to watch Johnny Carson to see him play, and what a jackass. That ruined my whole
Yeah, I can understand that.
thing. But and being in this business for a drummer, I get to go to these NAMM shows,
Right.
and I've seen
Seen
some
all
of
the
them.
drummers that you ever set out to.
Yeah. Well, pretty much.
That's
Yeah,
good.
pretty much. You know, I never got to see Gene Krupa at all, but you know, that was
I
before
gonna ask
Rich.
you that. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was before Rich. There's several. Jim Chapin was one of my. Jim was one of the best that I ever got to see in person. I got to see Louis Bellson several times and playing and at NAMM shows. I don't know if it'd be interesting to anybody but me, but there's a friend named Pretty Purdy, and Pretty Purdy is one of the finest drummers in the world. He played a lot of Steely Dan stuff. He played with everybody, and Pretty's got a little age on him, black guy, and it wasn't Tommy Aldridge. Some other great drummer, Liberty DeVito was there, and we were at a NAMM show, and Tommy Lee comes walking down, and he had some women hanging on him, half dressed, you know, and Pretty goes, "Wow, I wish I had me some of that." And Tommy Liberty said, "Pretty, you got more talent in your little fingernail than that man's got in his whole body." He said, "He's a drummer? I was talking about them women." He didn't even know he was a drummer. But I mean, but growing up here, I got such a chance to play with different types of people, and it's still pretty much that way. And
You see a lot of drummers here these days. They're still drummers.
yeah, I got lessons here at my shop that the kids are lining up and taking lessons from, even adults are taking
Who
from.
would this be? Who would the drummers be that they're lining up for?
Well, a fellow named K.O. Wallace, and the K.O. teaches here at the shop, and I hope you get a chance to talk with him, because he's one of the best. He's done a tremendous job over the years. But yeah,
Well, you got any advice for new drummers? I mean,
yeah, less is more.
yeah.
Learn to read, learn to play patterns, learn your rhythms, learn all that stuff, because it's old-fashioned, but Lord have mercy, that's what works for every situation. So far in life, it's worked great. I mean, this is the basics.
Like, yours is about like my basic advice is work with the drummer.
Yeah,
If you got a keyboard player, put tape all up down the lower register and say we got a bass player.
that's a pretty good idea. That's awesome. That's pretty good.
So,
But yeah, I would definitely work with somebody like we talked about. Work with somebody that's a little better than you, and your job is to meet them and pass them. That's the way I look at it.
and that's the way it works with every instrument.
Exactly. Yeah.
John, I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking the time to
Sure.
do this out of your busy schedule.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the next section of conversation about the story.
Oh, there's a million stories in this walls.
And I can't wait about that. So, thank you.
You got it.
Well, that does it for another version of Big Sound Small Town. Hope to see you again soon.